this is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services, and today we are talking about ASQA's regulatory priorities, specifically focusing in on international students. So if you saw our other video on ASQA's regulatory priorities, which was focused on aged care, if not, you can go back and check that out. ASQA does every year identify their key kind of priorities that they're looking into, the higher risk areas, and international students has hit the list yet again in 2023. I think it has hit the list for like the last 4 or 5 years running, and that is just obviously because of the challenges that international students present. So general international delivery requires 20 hours of structured face-to-face training, and then allows for something like 20-25% of the training to be delivered as like kind of structured online and things like that. There are a lot of RTOs that kind of don't clearly evidence the structured training that happens outside of it. And this is kind of, again, just one of the areas where it presents international students as higher risk. A lot of this is also because we got to try and find the right balance of international students being able to work and international students being able to study. They are actually in Australia to study, and one of the key things that you need to determine as an international RTO is making sure that your students are what are called GTEs, genuine temporary entrants, and so therefore your enrollment process to ensure that your students are GTEs is an important part of that quality process. One of the other areas that does make international students more high risk is the general working with agents. So there are some fantastic agents out there who provide a lot of support to students. They provide a lot of information about the courses. There are also agents out there who are not so diligent and don't provide information to students or actively mislead students, or sometimes they are telling the truth and they're putting their students down the wrong road because they're telling students things like, you don't have to show up to class and you just need to make sure you pay your fees and you get the qualification. These are the dodgy agents and the dodgy RTOs that ASQA has to deal with on a regular basis when they get phone calls from students who are being kicked out or have been told that they don't have skills or all sorts of things. So, it's unfortunately, it's one of those things where the small group of bad providers kind of tarnish the sector for the rest of us. But it is certainly a risk. So if you are an international college, you do need to choose your agents very, very carefully. You need to be actively monitoring those agents and making sure that they are providing the correct and accurate information to students. It's really important with international students that you set everything off from the day dot on the right flow, and particularly things like attendance, getting assessments in on time, paying your fees on time, ensuring that the assessments are authentic. These are some of the big ticket items that you really want to be clear about with students from day dot. Additionally, if you're working with qualifications that do require work placement, you also need to be clear with your students as to whether or not that's something that you are providing as a service, so therefore you are sourcing the placement for students, or whether or not you expect the students to source placement for themselves. If you do make the decision that you are going to make students source their own placements, it's not something I personally recommend, but that's an RTO's choice. Then you really need to be very, very clear about all of that information in your marketing, in your enrollment, in your confirmation of enrollment, in your orientation. I would have this be telling the students this very, very consistently so that they are very aware that that requirement is going to be on them, and get them the forms and the documents from day one of the course, so that they can kick off that process early if they do have to find their own placement, particularly if it's in something like aged care or something like that, because it can be difficult for students to find placement in some of these areas. So it is really important that you're providing them with every opportunity to succeed as early as possible. So some of the things that they also talk about is what are called saturated qualifications. So the top 3 areas for saturated qualifications that they've nominated this year were aged care and childcare, which have been very, very typical. The other one that came on the saturated qualifications list was Advanced Diploma of Civil Construction. So again, if you were a CRICOS RTO and you were doing an addition to scope in one of these areas, or if you were applying to be a CRICOS RTO and, you know, some of these qualifications were going to be ones that were on your list, that would certainly be something that would factor into whether or not you are potentially going to, you know, get an audit, the potential for increased scrutiny, things like that. That would factor into all of my risk analysis. So if I was working for an RTO that had any of these sorts of qualifications on scope, they would be like my target, they would be on my targeted hit list for additional validations, you know, for making sure that the assessments are very robust, for making sure that my marketing was super accurate, you know, for going and doing the kind of reconciliation between the TAS and the marketing and, you know, the letters to students, to make sure that all of that sort of stuff lined up and was all matching each other. So yeah, that's just a little bit about international students. I think for me, like the 3 key things is, if you are working with international students, incredibly robust marketing and agreements with agents, really clear information to students via the marketing enrollment and orientation process, and very strong, like be strong from day one in relationship to your expectations for students and also the support that you're providing to students. And then, you know, just do what you say and say what you do. So those are kind of my key areas. And then obviously assessment is always going to boil down to your number 1, because ASQA is forgiving of a lot of things, but if at the end of the day you're issuing qualifications to students and you don't have evidence of their competencies, that is the number 1 threat to the vet sector, and it's certainly going to basically take any audit outcomes from, you know, oh look, you need to fix this and you need to fix this, to, you know, what you're doing is actually presenting a risk to the vet sector, and therefore more serious consequences are likely to follow from that. Anyway, guys, I hope you found this helpful. As always, videos dropping every Wednesday and Sunday. If you do like this content, please smash the like button, subscribe. Please comment on the video if you found it helpful. We will be getting into lots of other things over the next couple of weeks. We've just dropped a series on the annual declaration of compliance. Make sure that you guys are following up on that and that you've got your processes ready, because those are going to be coming out on April 17th if they have not already come out. We've also got a great series coming out for RTO operations. I will be having some more information out about that soon. But otherwise, thank you very much. Hope you found this helpful. I am Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services.